Hello, this is Brian Rowe. I'm here with another deck tech. And before I really jump into this deck tech, I want to tell you a little bit about where it came from. One of my favorite formats is Pauper. I don't actually play it online, I play it with friends. Mostly it's a kind of gateway way to get people into the game because the decks don't cost very much. And today I'm going to talk about one of those decks that I've taken and I've turned it into a legacy deck. So the Pauper deck was basically a lightning bolt deck. It took pretty much every version of Lightning Bolt and common burn spell that there was and put it all into one deck with a bunch of mountains. It did pretty well overall. And what I've done is I've transformed that into a relatively inexpensive, or at least inexpensive for legacy terms, deck that I call Bob Bolt. So let's take a look at the deck here. And let's start over here with really what was the foundation or center of the deck, of that Pauper deck that I was talking about. First, we've got 4 lightning bolts. The original 3 damage for 1 mana, incredible card, and then several different attempts at making something similar but nowhere near as good. Let's look next at Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is an interesting one from Legends. It's a sorcery instead of an instant, so it's a little bit slower. One of the other things about this is that for 2 red, your opponent can throw it back at you or one of your creatures, and if they do that, you can spend 2 red and throw it back at them. I will often wait until I've got 3 red to play this one, if I've got an option to play others, hoping that they'll throw it back at me and I'll get 6 points of damage out of it instead of 3. That doesn't happen very often, but it's definitely worth a try. Lava Spike is a sorcery, an arcane sorcery. The arcane doesn't matter here. But what matters is that it does 3 damage to target player for 1 red. It's a little bit slower than Lightning Bolt. A little less versatile, but still 3 for 1. Next one here that we've got is Shard Volley. And Shard Volley has an additional cost to it, which is to sacrifice a land. So this is one of the last ones that you end up casting. We've got Rift Bolt over here, which is from the Time Spiral block. It's 3 casting costs for 1 damage, but the really nice part about it is that it has the option to suspend it for 1 red. And for that 1 red, you suspend it. The next turn during your upkeep, you take the suspend counter off, and then you can Lightning Bolt either a player or a creature. Does let your opponent prepare for a little bit, but the 3 for 1 is still definitely worth it here. And then one of the things that I really like in this deck is a new one that came out of Innistrad called Bump in the Night. Its target player loses 3 life, so damage prevention doesn't work on it, and it's got flashback for 6. And it's surprising how often this flashback may actually be the last 3 points of damage that you need in a game that is drawn out way too long. So that's really the foundation of the deck. 20 of those cards came straight from the Pauper deck, and the Bump in the Night is also a Pauper, but was not in the original design. Now we move over to some of the other cards in the deck. This one is also from Pauper. It's Flame Rift. It's 1 red, 1 colorless, 4 damage to each player. This is incredible. It does hit you, so it's not good against other burn decks. I have actually drawn games with this, though, where I was playing against another burn deck in a local Pauper tournament at a place called Card Kingdom, and we were both down below 3 life playing similar decks, and Flame Rift pulled out a draw there, which was really nice. Grim Lavamancer. Now we're getting on to our first rare in this deck. Grim Lavamancer. For 1 red, tap it, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, and he deals 2 damage to either a target creature or player. This is incredible with the number of lightning bolts in this deck. You can often get 4 or even 6 damage out of him if you get him early on. Very happy with him in the deck. Next one that we've got here is Dark Confidant, which is where the Bob comes from. The picture there is because this was an invitational winning card. It's actually of a Magic player on there. And this card allows you at the beginning of your upkeep to reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. And if you'll notice, outside of the Rift Bolts and the Flame Rift so far, you would only be losing 1 life per card. If you draw land, you're losing 0. So the loss of life is usually really trivial in this deck, and it ends up turning into an extra 3 points of damage for your opponent. I've got 3 Duresses in here just to kind of see what my opponent has, plan out the game, and decide where I want to go. I'm not super happy with these. I think they should probably get moved to the sideboard. I'd rather have a little more damage each time that I end up playing them. Next, I've got Goblin Guide in here. Goblin Guide is just an incredible 1-drop. It's got haste. Whenever Goblin Guide attacks, defending player reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's a land, that player puts it into his hand. Now, often, this will mean that your opponent gets an extra card, but they often also die with a hand full of extra land. If you are on the play and you put this out first turn, attack, they end up getting a land and don't have a first turn drop. They often end up discarding it, and with 2 Goblin Guides in play, just the land doesn't matter that much. The land drawback here is really not a big deal. It's the fact that first turn he can get through for 2 damage, second turn another 2. By third turn you've often got 6 points of damage for 1 red out of this guy. And even late game, if your opponent taps out, you can often sneak him through for another 2. Often his worst case is, or the worst that happens, you only get 2 points of damage out of him. But he is just an incredible creature. Now we got moving over here to the land sweep. My original deck just ran a bunch of mountains. Here, since I'm in Legacy, I've also upgraded some of the other lands. One of those here, let's look at, is Wasteland. I'm only running 3 in the deck, but you sacrifice it and destroy target non-basic land. This is just incredible in Legacy, where a lot of people run non-basic lands. I've got 4 Bloodstained Mires in here and 3 Badlands, so it's 7 sources of black. Plus 1 swamp. There's a rare case once in a while where your opponent will have a Wasteland out, you have a Bob and a Duress, or a Bob and a Bump in the Night, and you want to make sure that you can get both of those out. So running the 1 swamp has worked really well for me. I haven't had any problems getting the red out. I am running 20 land in here. There are some decks in the environment that run 18 or 19 land. I tried going down to 18 with this deck, and I don't have any deck manipulation like Brainstorm or any way to look for land if I only draw 1 land hand, and this deck does much better if I can get up to 2 lands, so I can often have 2 threats or Dark Confidant out, and Flame Rift. So I'm happy with it where it is at 20 land. At this point, I don't have a sideboard fully constructed for it. I'd love any ideas for the sideboard. I've got 2 Gorilla Shamans in here, an Ancient Grudge, and a Duress. I'm thinking about maybe putting a Taiga in the sideboard also, and more Ancient Grudges. The Gorilla Shaman's interesting because it doesn't tap to use its ability. It's 1 mana and double X to destroy target non-creature artifact with casting cost equal to X. Now, against Infinity, this can just eat players' lands and their smaller forms of artifact mana production. It's an incredible card against several different artifact-based decks. I'm not really sure where I want to go with the rest of the sideboard. I'll probably throw some Red Elemental Blasts in here and work on some anti-blue to get things through. Maybe even some Sulfur Vortexes to prevent life gain also. But I'm still working on the sideboard and would love to hear any suggestions. Thank you for taking a look at this deck tech. The deck name is Bob Bolt, and it's a really quick, fast burn deck for Legacy. Hope you get a chance to give it a try. If you've got any feedback, please leave me a message. Thanks. Bye.